Well, hey there, scholars. This is Dr. Franklin, and this is a mini lecture dealing with video game ethics. In this particular presentation, I'll review a conceptual map for video game genres given the plethora of video games that are out there. Following that, I'll discuss the contamination thesis as related to video games. And then, closely connected to that, I'm going to begin a discussion about the morality of video games according to several theories. You all will find that my discussion of different theories will harken back to earlier lectures that I've proffered that deal with Aristotelian perspectives, Kantian perspectives, utilitarian perspectives, deontological perspectives, etc. There are millions of video games that have been designed to allow players to actively engage with them and others in an interactive manner. Given the diversity of genres and dimensions on which video games can vary, some researchers have found it helpful to use a conceptual map that depicts genres along two dimensions. These two dimensions include complexity and social interaction. Complexity can vary as far as simple and complex, and level of social interaction can vary as far as games being non-social and social. It should be noted that these conceptual maps are simplified approaches because some games are multifaceted and allow the user of commercial video games to play cooperatively and competitively. In this mini lecture, we will focus on the ethical issues of video games and the ways in which ethical dilemmas are presented in games. A common approach to assessing the moral worth and impacts of video games is to consider the content of the video games and the relations between playing a video game and that content and behavior in the real world. In other words, video games should be judged as morally acceptable or deplorable based on largely accepted offline moral norms. The aforementioned is referred to as the contamination thesis. The contamination thesis stresses the need for assessment of the morality of decisions and actions in video games, given that harmful video contents could spill out from the virtual world into the real world. A number of researchers offer support for the contamination thesis by pointing to how video games have been associated with sleep disruption, decreased neurocognitive and affective responses to negative stimuli. Some studies have found enhanced neurocognitive processing in video games, and there is marked interest in the therapeutic and rehabilitative potential of video games for a variety of nervous system disorders. Some research has highlighted how video gameplay robustly enhances executive functioning, attentional processing, spatial cognition, and perceptual processes. Though short-term research seems to highlight how violent video games put individuals at risk for adverse outcomes, such as desensitization and decreased empathy, most of those findings seem to be based on short-term relational studies. The scarce amount of longitudinal research seems to highlight less and less evidence for the contagion thesis. Koeckelberg believed that the evidence at best is controversial and the lack of empirical support makes the contamination thesis mute. One of his main objections is related to the content of the video game. He makes the case that if content is all that matters, then the contamination thesis can be applied to other media as well, for example, novels, television, board games, etc. In sum, many believe video games are defensible from moral perspectives found in Kantian deontological claims, utilitarian analyses, and virtue theory. Kantian deontological moral reasoning stresses two categorical imperatives. The first categorical imperative is that individuals should treat others in accord with how they would want others to treat them. In other words, act as if your standard of behavior should be universalized. The second categorical imperative stresses that individuals should never use people as a means to an end, but it should actually view people as ends within themselves. Kant believed that individuals have duties to themselves as animals, and any vice is harmful to one's character. Hence, if a person acts cruelly while playing an ultra-violent video game, this could constitute a violation of the player's duty to oneself. Additionally, and connected to the second moral imperative, if a person does not treat human analogs or other players with respect, that would be another moral violation, and some have concerns that if we don't treat video game characters with respect, then it's possible that the lack of respect could spill over into our offline lives. For some consequentialists, calling a video game violent is mere ethical emotivism, given that the games are fiction and crime simulators that allow players to indulge in immediate, non consequential behavior. Many consequentialists believe that the potential harm of video games should be weighed against the positive benefits. Utilitarian analysis may involve considering the entertainment value that individuals get from untying video game playing behavior from the sorts of consequences experienced in the real world. In other words, even though some violent video games offend and degrade different groups, the entertainment value offered to a great deal of people, that is, billions of hours of entertainment, the development of new technologies, countering depression, and enhancing cognitive functioning, is thought by some to outweigh the harms. Aristotle developed a virtue theory in which morality is understood in terms of the agent's character traits displayed in action. McCormick sees little hope for defending violent video games from an Aristotelian perspective because he believed that taking part in a video game that simulates extreme, decadent, and wrongful acts does not promote the cultivation of optimal character. Some disagree with McCormick's viewpoint because some violent video games have value as a source of moral development. This is largely based on game scenarios being designed in a manner that permits players to practice working through moral dilemmas that are similar to those that may occur in real life situations. For these researchers, they believe that violent video games may have merit because Aristotle focuses on learning virtue through practice, and video game designs with moral dilemma creates an opportunity for this to occur. Some researchers believe that bringing violent video games into science classrooms could encourage culturally sensitive ethics and citizenship education. Some researchers believe that focusing on violent video game content is not necessary, but rather the focus should be on how video games integrate violence into the video game narrative. Saccart in 2009 developed a model of video game ethics based on RCEP's three-level model of game analysis. This three-level model of game analysis involved the game system, which is a rule-based structure in which the narration of a game includes ethical issues. It involved the game platform, which is the influence of game developers' real-world ethical convictions, and player experience, which is the ethical gameplay that involves the creation of implicit rules between players of multiplayer online games. He adopted this model to develop a system of video game ethics that includes representation of ethics within each of the layers. This model allows a video game to be thought of as a designed experience or simulation in which ethical choices occur.